Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Allen. How's it going, man?
Ben, I am currently trying to balance, obviously being a TSR, working with you, and then having my entire extended family, which is like a collection of 20 relatives, all have to try to bounce in and out of the house. And it's been an experience trying to tell people. So what do you do again? It's like I write about people who run in circles. Like that's the bare bones of it. So yeah, hopefully that your hopefully your time with your family is a little just more like I just talked to a guy for an hour.
Yeah, my real job, I also have a hard time explaining to people, so I do understand the feeling, and I think when you tell people you do a podcast, I think everybody's first inclination is just to roll their eyes, which I'm like I totally get that. It's just like
Yeah,
I'm just a young dude who's just like talking
talking
to.
sports.
Yeah, exactly, like sure you have a podcast. So yeah, that's funny though. Yeah, it's been a busy 4th of July week. Obviously not in terms of racing and stuff, but we still had plenty of news to catch up on. The other thing we got to catch up on is ratings and reviews, because we have been stagnant, I think, for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, not great. Get on YouTube. I appreciate everyone who has been subscribing on YouTube. Yeah, really appreciate that. Keep going there, but yeah, we gotta get those numbers up. You can go if you're on YouTube. I've got all the links in the description. Check that out. If you're on Apple and Spotify, I'm trying to add more of those links in there as well. So
Yep.
yeah, it's right there. We got it for you. Go check it out.
Absolutely. All right, let's go on and talk about the main subject of this podcast, and that is all the coaching moves that we have seen lately. And we're going to start at UCLA. Joanna Hayes taking over as director, leaving USC. Former director at UCLA, Avery Anderson, retiring. And now Joanna Hayes joining her alma mater at UCLA to become the director there.
Great hire, excellent hire. She's worked with Sydney McLaughlin, Rye Benjamin. It's a slam dunk hire. It's probably super unsurprising,
Yeah.
um, but I think it makes sense. She's exactly what they need. Like she's worked with high profile names. She's from a high profile program, sprints and hurdles based kind of skill set, and that's probably where you really see like most major takeovers at major universities. That's usually where you see the direction of that kind of like investment going. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, it made a ton of sense. I think what's interesting now is trying to figure out what happens next, because now you have to wonder whether or not the what's going to happen with the coaching staff. And from what I've heard, I don't really know if anyone knows yet. I don't think anyone really knows what's happened. It's been, I think, like a month. And so I think we're just kind of all like in a waiting period to kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that the distance side has gone through so much turnover over the last couple years, and I mean, it would be tough if that just continued under, just because, I mean, it would make sense if Hayes wants to have her people in there. But yeah, like you said, I'll echo a few of the things that you mentioned. I mean, great hire for Hayes, or for UCLA to get Hayes, and not only like bringing back an alumni, but to steal her away from conference rival USC, I think is also
True.
significant, and crosstown rival as well. I think that's big for them as well. I don't want to neglect mentioning that her moving from, you don't see a lot of people make that move from USC to UCLA, but the fact that she obviously ran there I'm sure this is her dream job. So I would be shocked to
Right.
see her not coach for a long time with the Bruins.
Yeah. Like we said, kind of makes sense. When it comes to actually the distance roll and Andrew Ferris is there, I I'm like, man, that's just a crazy, like, it's just like you can't, nothing is just sticking. And, and like, I feel a little bit bad because he's kind of like jumped all around and this seemed like a really good spot. So I hope he stays, I hope like he's actually given a chance to kind of like build this
Yeah.
program. And I think saving grace here is that he's more than qualified for it. And I don't know what her connections are, what she has in mind. But if you are just looking at what the current staff has now, I would personally be more inclined to just say like, well, hey, he's here. He's already made some good progress, bringing over a few pretty decent names. The women's team has done well, so I'll be interested to see what happens.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on and go to Duke, where Kevin Jermyn is headed as the head distance coach, leaving Elon University. Jermyn, who was an assistant coach at Duke previously, again, kind of going back to where he had a lot of success there as an assistant. Again, a great hire. He's done really well with Elon. I think this is, he clearly wanted to come back to Duke, though, and in this role, I think is a perfect fit. I mean, the Duke program has elevated over the last couple of years, and he seems like the perfect guy to continue their progress.
He has made a good, like, he's built a really solid reputation out of very limited resources.
Yep.
Like Elon is not exactly a fully funded stacked powerhouse by any means. I mean, they don't even have a men's track team, right? And when you look at kind of the women that he's been able to kind of bring in, it's been, at least as of last year, was really solid. They had 4 women in the top 70 or something, or 80 at the Virginia Invite, and they were 13th, and they beat some really good names. And he's developed some great individuals, and so I think it made natural sense with him previously being at Duke, going staying in that Southeast region, going to Duke, and kind of taking that natural next step upwards. I do think there's going to be high expectations, like very high expectations. It's Duke. It's a fairly new coaching staff overall in terms of Sean Wilborn being the director there. And you would think that if he was able to do fairly well with Elon, with those resources, what can he do with the resources that he's going to be given? The problem is that, according to Teepers, they lose 6 of their top 7 from the Southeast regional meet, which is brutal.
Yeah, I understand that there's going to be high expectations. I hope that those expectations aren't super high, obviously, this year. As you mentioned, he has not been dealt a great hand,
No.
so to speak. And I think to expect him to come right in and be like nationally relevant right away, I think is going to make color the hire in a way that it should not. I do think, though, that in the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be the rightful expectation that this is a team that is competing for a national championship spot, and at least on probably on both sides, the men and women's sides. They've obviously come a lot closer, I think, on the women's sides the last few years, but I think he's the guy that can get them there. I mean, like you said, Elon was kind of this really came out of nowhere story at the Virginia Invite, and we were talking about, hey, could they have a shot on the women's side of making the championships? They obviously faded a little bit, but with his recruiting prowess and the resources that he's going to have, I would expect them to be kind of one of those top 4, top 5 staples on both the men and women's sides in the Southeast region for the next couple of years.
Yeah, the Southeast region is going to be tough. I mean, the ACC is tougher than the Southeast region.
Yes.
Which is, I guess, it's not like a crazy hot take or even surprising, but yeah, I mean, I'll be interested. I think the ACC is really just the gauge of how successful those programs are.
Sure.
And the ACC is just
Brutal.
so stacked. It's crazy stacked. So yeah, I'm rooting for him though. I think he did a really nice job, and I think he deserved this Duke job. I don't think he's going to be held to a 1-year standard. I think that would be silly. But I do like Adam Cook, that he's still there. He's a great recruiter, great recruiter. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on and go to Purdue, where we saw Norbert Elliot retire, and he will be replaced by Tony Miller as the director. Both of these guys more in the sprints direction. What do you think this impact is going to have on the distance side at Purdue?
I don't know if it's I don't know. I mean, so Connor Mahoney Ashbury, another first year coach who actually just got to his program. Um, he's no longer with that program. I think they let go a handful of individuals on that staff, and now they're interviewing for distance jobs. And I'm a little disappointed because like that's a really solid team, and he wasn't really given a chance to like really
No.
see if they can build something with it. It's also a young team. I think who they hire could be, really impactful and pivotal in terms of what direction that distance program is going to go. I don't know if it's really going to change all that much, though. I mean, Miller is a sprints based coach. He he's now the director. There's really no reason for him to kind of like wean off of that, especially when you're in the Big Ten, which now is only going to get way more stacked in the distance events with Oregon, with Washington. Although I guess you could say the same thing about the sprints with UCLA and
Yep.
USC. So I don't really think it's going to alter that at all.
Yeah, I was wondering if they would kind of try to pivot to more of a distance oriented coach. They've obviously had a lot of success throughout the years on the distance side. I mean, as well as on the sprint side. I guess it really just depends on what you think the Big Ten is going to look like over the
Yeah.
next couple of years, and how you think you're best going to be able to stay relevant nationally and at a conference level. And clearly, they think sticking with more of the track and the field aspect in terms of sprints is the better way to go.
Yeah, and traditionally that is kind of the case, especially in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It's a good sprints conference, but like the SEC is undeniably better,
Yes.
and there's just not the same like overwhelming firepower. So there's room where you can find good scoring in those sprint events. Granted, if you do the right recruiting, you're at a well-funded school, so on, so on, so on. So yeah, I don't know. Purdue's just like I'm kind of scratching my head. I'm like really curious. I don't know what they do. This is a team that qualified for the cross country national meet like just a few years ago, and I'm trying to figure out like what's that next step for them, and I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, kind of a little bit of a sleeping giant in terms of like just from a distance or like perspective. They've had some really good teams over the last decade, and they just haven't quite been as potent over the last few years. And I think if you give the right coach enough runway and enough time, that this has a potential of again being a top program in cross country.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think they're going to be like, you know, um, I
Pouring
don't think they're
money
gonna be like
into it.
top 10
Yeah.
team. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I can maybe see them sneaking back into the national meet, but yeah, I mean, again, it also just depends on what the allocation of scholarships and funding and what direction do they go under Miller, and I don't think we know that yet. Speaking of assistant coaches who were sprints coaches and
Sure.
hurdles coaches, I guess taking over for their new director, Matt Kane, new director at Florida State, taking over for Bob Braman. I don't dislike the hire, but I was a little surprised. I thought they would go national, and I thought they would try to land like an already like heavy established director. You are trying to fight to go into the SEC. Florida State is, and there is now a heavy, there's going to be a lot of money directed into certain aspects of the NCAA in general. And I don't know. I just felt that that they were going to get someone like who's a far more established director. I like that Kane's there. I think he kind of sustains like a lot of like what was already happening. But yeah, I was surprised.
Were you surprised that they stuck to like that they went in the sprints direction? Obviously, Brahman being a little bit more distance oriented.
I'm not surprised that they went sprints over distance. I think it only makes sense to go sprints, especially if you want to join the SEC. It's kind of like a prerequisite. Like you just have to have great sprints, and the SEC is getting only stronger in the distance events too, especially with the addition of Texas there. So I, I don't. I'm not necessarily surprised. I just thought they would go for someone who was already a director. Like I said, Kane, I think already extends what's happening. He's known. He's been there. He's had great success with some of these individuals. I mean, that Florida State has really done well on that part. Um, but yeah, when I was talking to a coach actually about this, and we're chatting, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know who the Florida State job is going to be." And I was like, "No, I hear it's going to be Matt Kane." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't expect that." I'm like, "Yeah." just so I just know that I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I thought he made sense if they're going to, again, wanting to beef up and continue to pour resources in the sprint side. I think he makes a lot of sense. You look at his resume, you look at the guys that he's developed, his experience. I know he hasn't been a director, but he's obviously been in this world for a long, long time. So I think that from that perspective, it makes sense. But I hear you. It's Florida State. They like to make big splashes. They like to
Right.
make the headlines with their coaching hires, and this isn't really that. And I am curious to see what this means for their distance program, because Braman's obviously led that cross country side very successfully, and they've put in a lot of resources in that direction. Do they kind of this, and over the last few years they haven't been quite as successful, so do they kind of continue that shift of focus away and leave Florida State not being one of those traditional powerhouses in the South in cross country?
Yeah, and I think that's the key, because like the really the way that this team has stayed afloat over the years is the transfer portal. That's
Yes.
how they've stayed afloat, and I don't know how active and in what way they'll do that. And I assume Brahman was heading the distance side of things, and if he was in that case, then I guess they're going to have to hire a new distance coach too,
Yes.
which I think is also a new interesting caveat when you think of it from that perspective. Um, and that also makes you wonder, okay, like, well, how would that team be constructed? And by the way, I think when you say, just correct me if I'm wrong, but when you say Florida State likes to make big splashes with their coaching hires, I think you just mean as like an athletic program as a whole.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, they haven't had to do this on the track side for a long time because Brahman's been there
Right.
for so long. So yeah. Yeah. And just looking at their staff, so they do have Cody Halsey, who is whose title is women's head cross country coach. So it'll be interesting if they're just going to be hiring someone on the men's side. She's obviously had experience a lot of places. I think most notable, well, the last place was Miami, and then
Yep.
Oklahoma State, maybe previously before that. So she's there, but I mean, just looking at their staff, there does seem to be an opening for the men's head cross country coach.
Well, I haven't checked the NCAA job list yet, although sometimes they just post that because they
Yeah.
just have to, and they kind of already know who they're going to be hiring. Um, All right, keying off of that real quick, Mark Rinker takes the Elon job. He was the assistant coach at the assistant coach at Eastern Michigan. Spent some time at LSU. I I don't really have an opinion. Seems like this was a good natural step. He's been an assistant and has, you know, I just think it's a natural next step. I don't have really have much of a strong opinion about it.
Yeah, I think it's a good hire for Elon. These are the type of guys you have to try to land. Someone that's up and coming, that is has some aspirations of becoming a head coach and moving up in the track and field world. And yeah, he's had a lot of success wherever he's been, and I think he's the perfect guy to continue what Kevin Jermyn has started at Elon.
Yeah, I think at the very least he just has good experience, natural stepping point forward. That's all I've got. Also, be aware there's going to be another. I'm just going to throw this out to everyone. I've spoken to multiple coaches on this. There's going to be another distance job opening. It's not like in the Power Five, but it's in what I would call a notable conference. There's almost certainly going to be an opening. And if that happens, one name that I got floated was a fairly significant name. Not like, oh my God, groundbreaking. So let's be monitoring that. I'm not saying anything yet because it's super
Speculative.
unofficial yet. I don't even say speculation. Like I'm pretty confident that this position is going to be open.
Okay.
And again, I don't think it's not necessarily like a powerhouse or anything like that, but I do think that if enough things break the right way, based on what I'm hearing, you can begin to see like a bunch of bricks falling into place where it's like, well, that coach was there, then that coach was there, then that coach was there.
Yeah.
And I think that would almost be the job that does that. It's possible. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
what I want to say on that.
we've already kind of seen that, right? Where I mean, just the coaches that we've talked about here of Elon and who being taken to Duke and then needing to replace that, and so that gets it going, and the higher the job is, the more like rungs in the ladder that need to be replaced. So yeah. I know nothing, but I'm sure that like won't be the only big thing that happens this summer.
No.
There's going to be a lot of coaching changes as well as a lot of transfer changes because that's just kind of the world we're living in right now. And it's not going to stop anytime soon.
No, it is not. And you know what else is not going to stop? Our transfers and us talking about them. So let's move to that. Lucy Jenks to Georgetown. We're the first to report this. I don't like this move. I love this move.
It's kind of, but it's not the classic Georgetown move. Is it like in terms of like middle distance?
Okay, so when I say I don't like it, I hope everyone heard that I said I love it. Okay,
yeah, you said
just
you
want
love
to be
it.
very
I know.
clear.
Yeah,
I don't really have an issue with this at all. I think it's pretty on par. She's just a souped up version of kind of the impact lineup scores that they've been getting over the past few years.
Yeah, from like a cross country standpoint,
from a cross country perspective,
yeah, absolutely. And they needed someone like her to kind of come in, I think, and be a stable force. I guess the only reason I think it's like not like the perfect fit is she's not going to come in and be like an 800, 1500. Like she can run a good 15. I'm not saying that she can't.
They don't need that.
No, yeah, and so I mean, from a balancing out their roster standpoint, I think that's a fair point that she fits what they need rather than like maybe what they're already good at.
Okay, and that's fair too, because I think the other caveat in all of this is they've landed a ton of other supporting members, like Fiona Max from Princeton, who was in the top 100 of the NCAA XC championships back in 2021, I want to say. I know it's been a while, but she's at least proven that she can be competitive or stable. There's got a girl whose name, I think it's like, I'm blanking on the name right now, but she's from the UK, 16 flat 5K, third at like the British University Championships. Who else? Charlotte Tompkinson. She's more of that 800-meter runner presence that I think matches well and kind of balances out this recruiting class. And then what I think we're kind of missing in all this is that they also have a really good recruiting class, which features Charlotte Bell, who was a 435 miler in high school. And I think Jenks for me is like, man, this team was already like a top 10 team last year until the national meet. And just, I think things went terribly for them then. If you add Jenks in, and I think we think she can maybe be a top 50 name or at least close to it.
Yeah.
That gives you 3 low sticks. And I think that's going to be really, really hard, especially with, I think, the supporting cast still looking pretty good.
Yeah, and the British girl that you're talking about, Almi Rinker.
Yep.
I'm just kind of scrolling through her power of 10 right now, and I mean, doesn't have like the fastest track times, but I do like what like she's done over the cross country course. It might not be someone that can come in right away and be an instant impact. But I wouldn't be surprised in a year or two, or maybe even just by the end of this season, that she's someone that could be an impact piece for them. But yeah, Jenks, you know what you're going to get. I think we feel pretty confident considering the last indoor and outdoor season that she's had. She didn't have like her best race of the season, you would say, at NCAA's, still finished 93rd. So I think she gives you a certain floor. She's a floor raiser.
Yep.
You're at least going to get someone that's going to be a top half of the finisher, or a top half finisher at the national meet, with the potential of being right on that All-American bubble. And I think that's exactly what they need. Just a little consistency, some veteran presence to make sure that team peaks and hits their potential at the national meet.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I love the floor comment. And I'm now going to move us to our final name of the evening. Evan Dorenkamp to Oregon. You were this close from getting this,
Yeah,
correct? You were
I
this close.
know.
I'll let you
I
watch
was
going.
like, when I saw that coming, I was like, just like
Penn
the
State
other
Washington. Penn
Pacific
State
Northwest
Washington for
team.
anyone. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what do we think? What do we think of this?
I mean, it makes sense. Like, I mean, he comes in with great middle distance chops, can help them in cross country as well. I think this is, I mean, he's run 3:55 in the mile. I think for him to, I think it makes sense that he would want to come to Oregon. I mean, the prestige and the of the program, and he's someone that they just need bodies, honestly, that they can know are consistent and can be relied on. And he's exactly that. I don't know if you're getting someone that's going to be a huge impact piece in the fall. And I don't even know if he's going to be someone that's going to be scoring you points in the indoor and outdoor season, but he's going to give you at least an option and give you the capability of possibly scoring points. He's going to be a great DMR piece. I think he's not going to knock it out of the. I don't think he's going to be someone that we look back and are like, oh man, he completely like changed this program and really revitalized them. But I think he's a nice stepping stone as they continue to grow this program back to what it was.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think he's actually a pretty, I don't want to say safe bet. I don't think he's quite there, but I would imagine that he's going to be a multi-time scorer on the track at the Big Ten level.
Oh, Big Ten. Yes. I agree on Big Ten, not national meet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not the national meet. Yeah.
Yes,
I think
that's
he
what
can,
I meant.
yeah, I think he can get back to the national meet. I think it's highly, I don't say highly unlikely, but I don't think he's favored to like be an All-American or score at the national meet. That's true.
Yes. Yeah.
On the track specifically, I do actually like his cross country chops though. He was first at Paul Short last year. He won Paul
Mm-hmm.
Short, which is like nothing to sneeze at. And then he won the
Nope.
B race at Nuttycombe, also nothing to sneeze at. Like usually the top runner in the B race at Nuttycombe usually has some kind of chops, right? After that, it falls off a bit. But 17th at Big Ten XC, not bad. That's okay. And 16th at the Mid Atlantic Regional. To me, he's basically Elliot Cook, just not as great on the track. And which is, I don't want to like say he's not as great and he still has a 3:55 mile PR. I think he's another Elliot Cook. And you put him and Cook and hopefully at 100% Devin Hart with a more improved supporting cast and younger guys getting older. I think it's going to be a different outlook for Oregon this season. I think there's a lot more veteran presence there than they had last year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're kind of saying the same thing, just coming at it from different directions. I think I'm coming at it more from a like, he's probably not going to be Elliot Cook, but he can provide a lot of the same things that
Yeah,
Cook does. And I think that's kind of your point, which is excellent to point out because yeah, he's just good at everything. And again, a guy that raises their floor, a guy that gives them another great option in the DMR during the indoor season. And hey, if he's trained next to Elliot Cook every day, is someone that could maybe elevate to another level where he is in position to be an All-American. I think where I'm coming at it from is I wouldn't bet on that, but
well, he has been an All-American before. No, he was an All-American over 1,500 meters. Now,
yeah.
Again, the NCAA over 1,500 meters has gotten crazy good. And he's been, I know there was at least one injury that he's been trying to rally himself back from. And so he's not really in 355 shape or hasn't been in 355 shape as of late, but he's still competitive and he's still putting up great marks usually, and at least being a factor in the Big Ten. And I think that's, if you're Oregon, 3-season value, veteran, similar to Cook, that's what you need.
Absolutely. All right, let's wrap it there. I'm sure by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have learned of a couple more transfers that we'll be talking about over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, make sure you're doing ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple, subscribing on YouTube. Read the summer syllabus that Garrett put out. I think that's a great thing to kind of get you prepared for what is probably seen as a slow time or the off season for us, which it very much is not, because there is so much news that we are going to be the ones breaking, and we're going to be giving you the type of rankings that you're not going to be able to get anywhere else going into this cross country season. So make sure you are paying tight attention to the site.
I just posted our men's way too early XC preview, and it's just me jotting down a ton of notes about certain teams that I find interesting and fascinating. And that that was a very good day for the site. I'll just put it that way. And so I'm going to have to write the women's article today as well. But yeah, cross-country stuff is coming. I promise it's going to be here. But yeah, I'm excited for the rankings. Those will be later in the month, like late July, but they're being crafted. I can tell you that. Ben, I still have to send a few things your way. And we're about to begin finalizing lists, looking over lists, and putting it together. So yeah, that's all I got, Ben.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.